What's up, pumpers? Jerome here with a really exciting WoW video. Today we're going to be covering the recent news from Blizzard about the Season of Mastery, a new WoW Classic Fresh experience. We're going to cover everything Blizzard's been talking about, all the changes they're going to make, and my thoughts on every single piece of news. If you like the video, please give the video a like, hit the subscription button, and the notification bell. Otherwise, I can't keep coming out with videos like this one.
You are not prepared!
So let's get right into the news. Blizzard announcing a WoW Classic Fresh launch. This is going to be the Season of Mastery. It's got a bunch of new changes. The open beta will be on October 5th, which is coming right up. A ton to talk about. I have the blog post open. I wanted to cover everything that's going on. So let's just get into it. Greetings, adventurers. WoW Classic Season of Mastery is coming, giving all players a chance to start fresh and a level playing field. This time around, we're planning slightly more changes. We'll launch new WoW Classic realms for Season of Mastery. These realms will invite new and current WoW Classic players to begin fresh at level 1 for a complete reset of WoW Classic's content, starting again at the very beginning of the World of Warcraft saga. What's different in WoW Classic Season of Mastery? As with the first release of WoW Classic, we're planning 6 content release phases. In WoW Classic Season of Mastery, however, phase unlocks will happen faster. We're planning for a 12-month cadence, with phases unlocking roughly every couple of months. Here's the current outline for the 6 phases. Phase 1, the WoW Classic Season of Mastery launch, Molten Core, Onyxia, Maraudon, and the PvP honor system and Battlegrounds. These are moving up from Phase 3 and 4. Meanwhile, Phase 2, Dire Maul, Azergos, and Kazakh. This is different than last time. Last time we got Dire Maul on October 15th, and then we got Azergos and Kazakh and PvP honor later on. Phase 3 coming up, we had Blackwing Lair, Darkmoon Fair, and the Darkmoon deck drops begin. Phase 4, Zul'Gurub and Green Dragons, just like before. Phase 5, Encourage War Effort begins, and the raids open as the war effort dictates. And then Phase 6, Naxxramas and the Scourge Invasion, just like last time. Raid boss updates. The original release of WoW Classic was made to recreate the difficulty and challenge of patch 1.12 from the original WoW release. While we strive to bring a faithful recreation of that release, many raid encounters turned out to be easier than the first time around. Players simply were more experienced and prepared, and patch updates greatly increased player power. With that in mind, we're planning a few changes to make these early raid bosses pack a bit more of a punch and attempt to recapture the original challenge they presented. These changes currently include, but are not limited to, removal of world buffs in raid instances, restoring mechanics that were removed early on to some raid bosses, no boss debuff limit up from 16 debuffs in WoW Classic, increased health on bosses to offset player buffs, and the removal of debuff limit. Our intent with these changes is for this experience to feel somewhat more challenging than WoW Classic did in 2019. Due to Season of Mastery's faster content release cadence, we're also planning several improvements and changes. These include faster leveling. We're planning on increasing experience gains from what they were in the first iteration of WoW Classic. Our current plan is to set them close to what the 1 to 60 XP rates are in Burning Crusade Classic, with a bigger focus on quest XP increases. Quality of life updates. In addition, we're planning on introducing certain improvements that weren't in the original WoW Classic release, but we think can help create a better experience, such as meeting stones converted to summoning stones, increased mining and herbalism nodes. Realms tend to be densely populated in WoW Classic compared to the original 2005 design. Increasing gathering node spawn should provide a more consistent economy this time around. WoW Classic Season of Mastery will have an open beta beginning on October 5th. Now that we've covered the news post update from Blizzard, I wanted to go over every single thing they've changed in the new Season of Mastery WoW Fresh. I want to talk about every single thing and what the reasoning behind these changes are. A lot of people are confused, some people are angry, some people are happy. I want to talk about the reasoning and logic and mindset behind every single change, and hopefully you'll understand where Blizzard's coming from and maybe some things they have to work on to make things a little better. The first big change Blizzard will be making with the Season of Mastery update will be increasing the cadence of releases. This means instead of a 1.5 year cycle from the beginning of WoW Classic to Naxxramas, we're looking at a 1 year cycle. This is way faster and has huge implications on the game. For example, the original WoW Classic launched on August 26th, and you saw a huge amount of time. It was February 12th that we saw Blackwing Lair. This means that a great guild will go from 24 raid lockouts in the original WoW Classic to only 8 raid lockouts in the new Season of Mastery update. This is way, way, way different. The difficulty of these raids is going to be way higher because people will not have maxed out BIS gear going into every single phase, and some people will be always behind on gear. This is the first place where Blizzard has a little bit of controversy because without expedited raid lockouts or additional loot being dropped from these mobs, this is just almost a little bit too fast. That being said, I do like the idea of seasons. This is what they clearly want. It's a Path of Exile business strategy that has worked beautifully. You build hype for every season, you make small changes that people want, you keep things people liked, and you just generate a hype machine out of nowhere for things that aren't really that different to begin with. So I think Blizzard is really smart to do seasons. I think expedited seasons are genius. This is exactly what they need to do. The problem is, how do you get the loot situation sorted? This is not the way the game was designed to be played. And a lot of people are going to be frustrated and maybe even quit the game if they just can't get loot, and then the next phase comes and they don't get loot, and then the next phase comes, and then we end up with like a 2 or 3 month ZG patch, which I think is the biggest issue here, is we're going to end up having a lot of downtime at certain times, and certain patches are going to go really, really, really fast. So we're going to see the MC and the BWL in 2 months, and then ZG will linger for like 2 extra months, and people really only want to do it for like 2 weeks. And then AQ will only be 2 months, which I think is a little bit too short going into Nax, and people will be unprepared. I think this is a little bit of a concern here. How do we make the game still fair and fun, considering there are 40 people in the raid? This totally changes the loot dynamics. How will people get loot? The best guilds will have to run insane split raids to make up for this. This is going to be a real interesting problem. If Blizzard has any ideas or solutions, or if you have any ideas or solutions, I'm sure they're looking into stuff right now. Suggestions, I'm sure, are very welcome at this stage, and maybe they can do some things to improve the loot situation. Next up, we have an extremely controversial change, which is the removal of world buffs. This caught me a little bit by surprise. I was expecting a sort of buff-saving solution like the Chrono Boon. Obviously, in Classic, the world buff situation was not going to work. It caused people to have to log out and keep a character on ice for maybe even 2 weeks with Dark Moon Fair. It was just a really, really, really bad way to keep people coming back to the game. Obviously, from a business perspective, it made very little sense, and it was frustrating, and it was causing people to not play the game. But at the same time, I thought world buffs were such an important part of Classic. I didn't really think that Blizzard would remove them entirely. So this world buff change is a little bit weird. I think the issue here, and we're going to talk about Blizzard's motivation later, but the issue here is Blizzard wants the game to become a little more casual friendly because they can generate a lot of nostalgia and hype for WoW Classic. But the only people that really, really enjoy and benefit from WoW Classic are the serious, most intense, most hardcore players. The players I like to watch every day, like Salve Dally and Tetsu and Prefox and Mytos. These guys are really, really, really into the game, and they love world buffs. And the world buff meta does, I think, a little bit disproportionately benefit people like that are so serious and so good, and they have such a perfectly optimized route for buffs, and they're going to play perfectly in the raid and never die and lose the buffs. For the average player, this whole world doesn't really even exist. And so you're basically creating multiple metas, and Blizzard needs to kind of bring everybody together. Basically, you're creating this world where there's players that are way, way, way far ahead of everyone else, and it makes balancing a little bit of a nightmare as well, because Blizzard clearly wants to make the raids harder this time around. But if you have world buffs as a great guild, you'll just clear in no time. The average guild will wipe over and over again, have to re-get buffs. So it's basically, in my opinion, this is mostly done because balancing and rebalancing bosses will be a huge mess for Blizzard, and they don't want to have to just make people go back and get world buffs like they did in Nax. I thought that was a disaster. The idea of having to go back and get world buffs just to clear Saffron, for example, seemed like such a chore. It's the kind of thing we can't have. I do kind of see that mindset. If they're going to tweak bosses and make them harder, they have to allow people to quickly reset their raids and get back into progression rating. It's a problem in TBC, but it would be a way bigger problem in Classic. and it's the kind of thing that I'm sure they're thinking about. And like I said, they're trying to tweak the bosses. They're trying to make bosses more difficult, bring back any sort of old mechanics they can get away with sort of claiming we're always intended to be in the game. They'll make every single boss, at least in the early stages, a little bit harder, hopefully. More health, more boss health, more damage, more mechanics to deal with, so that, you know, retail players aren't saying, hey, why are they just pressing one button and standing there doing nothing? It'll be a little more challenging. At the same time, they're removing the debuff limit to try to make other classes more viable, which I think is a great thing. I played Hunter in Phase 1 of Classic, and I would get yelled at for using Serpent Sting, and it just felt really bad that we were prioritizing certain classes, and I couldn't really be competitive as a DPS player because I was losing a lot of my abilities. The debuff limit was there for a reason. It allowed the game to be more balanced back in the day, but with the changes Blizzard's going to be making to bosses, I think the debuff limit being removed is a no-brainer. It makes a lot of classes more viable. Let's just kind of see how it plays out, what classes end up benefiting the most. I do think that without world buffs and with the debuff cap removed, class like Warriors will see a lot less benefit in Classic. We may not see class stacking. Another thing, this is going back to the loot situation, we may see a lot more variety in classes just to stack extra loot. And if you're doing a lot of split raids, you're going to see a ton of variety because every class will have loot, and that will actually give you an advantage in raids. Let me give you an example. You have a guild with full tier 1, but it's not quite the optimal comp, versus a guild with a more optimal comp, but only half the people have their BIS gear. I think I'd rather have the slightly suboptimal raid with more BIS gear. I think the numbers would add up there. So that obviously is a little bit of a controversial take, but I do think that this may change the meta, the way everything is shaking out. I don't think stacking Warriors will be the meta anymore, and I think we're going to see a lot more variety in classes. As for if I like these changes, I have been pushing for bosses to be harder in Classic for a long time. I think it's a great idea. I think this is the right way to go. The game, the millisecond Classic came out, was obviously not balanced properly around these very top private server guilds, and that kind of hurt the game a little bit. It made it so everyone thought the game was trivial. There was no meaning or relevance to the achievements of the top players because everyone thought, oh, this is really easy. Now, making the bosses harder now may not be the solution, but I think it's better than nothing. I think they've got to try a lot of things, just like in Path of Exile. See what sticks, see what doesn't stick. I think it's the right call. That being said, at the same time, the no world buffs is going to be really controversial. A lot of top players may not play because of it, but they've got to try things, and I'm not against trying new things. I'm not against this Path of Exile League style where they see maybe world buffs were a good thing. Let's put them in for the next one. Okay, next year, ideally, eventually, the timeline ends up at like 8 months, and they figure out the loot situation, and maybe they can just start, pumping out different little small changes. Maybe they add world buffs in. Maybe they allow certain things to be done that aren't allowed in the previous season. I think that's a really, really, really compelling idea. Next up, we have some economy changes here and some quality of life changes. So meeting stones will now work as summoning stones, which is a great idea. This is the kind of thing, though, that it's a little controversial because Classic was all about travel. It took forever to get to Blackrock Depths. It took forever to get to Upper Blackrock Spire. It just was an adventure. You had to fly there. You had to ride there. You might get ganked on the way. It could take you 2 hours. You were never quite sure what you were going to get, especially in Phase 1 and 2 of Classic. And that's kind of gone now. You're just going to summon. If people are ganking you, you're just going to either layer hop or wait until they're gone, and then you're just going to go back to summoning. The world will be a lot less open. There will be a lot less people in it, especially with the battleground changes. From even the very beginning, there will be a lot less people in the open world. Some people will think that's a deal breaker because they love classic open world PvP, but it remains to be seen how big of a damaging thing this is. I do think making the game more accessible, more quality of life can be really good. We've seen that with some games. RuneScape, for example, maybe went a little overboard with every single idea they could think of for quality of life and ending up implemented. It may end up making the game something you don't even remember playing in the first place, and that's a concern. But I don't think meeting stones are a huge change. They are looking at other changes similar to that. One thing they are going to be changing is the economy. So it's very clear to me Blizzard wants raiding to be cheaper in this new version of WoW Classic. They want raiding to be a lot cheaper. They're going to significantly increase mining and herb nodes, and this is a no-brainer. One of the biggest bottlenecks for raiding is the cost of raiding. And if they can make raiding half the price it was in Classic, or a third of the price, I'm sure they would love to do that. They want people to log in and make gold, for sure. But at the same time, they definitely definitely want people to stay logged in and playing and raiding and not quitting the game because they don't have any gold. That's a huge problem when you make raids more difficult, is things cost a lot of gold, and it's happening in TBC, and it is not ideal, even though it's very fun to do those raids. It is not ideal for the sub count and the player count, which Blizzard has to prioritize, and I understand why they want to make the economy cheaper, everything cheaper, so that people can progression rate and not get really down about it and end up quitting the game. Another thing that Blizzard is offering is, of course, the faster leveling, which is going to be presumably about 30% faster, considering that it's going to be TBC leveling speed, mainly focused on making questing a lot more beneficial for XP, which I think is a logical change. Of course, the hardcore community not thrilled about this. A lot of people think WoW leveling is the best part of Classic. I'm kind of there at this point. I wasn't there a long time ago. I do sympathize with the problem Blizzard has. I mean, you have these superstar streamers like Ninja, for example. If they can get a level 60 character and they start raiding, it's really, really, really good for the game. And a lot of those people didn't end up making it to level 60 in the first WoW Classic because they couldn't get through the leveling. The leveling takes so much time. As a streamer or as a content creator, you may just not have the time to do it unless you're specifically streaming WoW all the time. So I do think I sympathize with what Blizzard's trying to do. Of course, this does kind of cheapen the experience. It is a huge accomplishment to hit level 60 in WoW. And it should be an accomplishment. I'm not against the expedited leveling because I understand the bottom line here, which is more people playing. More people playing is good for all of us. I am with that. I know there's going to be pushback. I don't want to be the one guy defending this, but it does make sense from a relevant standpoint. Getting more people into the game is good for everyone. It'll allow Blizzard to have ideally more resources to put into the game, or at least an excuse to have more resources, and maybe they will, maybe they won't. But the more people playing, the better. The more people invested in the high-end end game, the better. And hopefully more people talk about this launch. I think it's a good idea, and I'm for it. I know most people will be against this, but I completely understand the logic here. Something not mentioned in the blog post is a blue post looking into mage boosting, which says, hello, there's a couple of points we'd like to add to the discussion. We would like to make sure it's still viable to level alt in this accelerated time frame. With that in mind, we're planning to take a look at mage boosting in the beta for this release. We have some ideas for adjustments we can make to reduce its impact, especially in current hotspots like Marathon. The proposed increased XP gains are focused entirely on quest XP. We don't have any plans to increase other sources of XP at this time. Thanks for the feedback. So this is a little controversial, of course. A lot of mages not happy about it. I do think any sort of change to get rid of really, really fast leveling, especially where you're not playing the game, should be looked at, just because you want people playing the game and investing in their character. I think just getting 60 without really playing at all is not ideal and takes away from Classic, because the best part of Classic, in my opinion, is leveling. It's having investment in your character and then reaching max level and feeling more, in tune with your character. You feel like you've accomplished something, and you don't really get that sitting AFK in Marathon. I think mages can maybe do it and get a slightly increased XP. I don't think that the skill should not be rewarded. It's high skill. It has a lot of knowledge behind it. I think they should get a reward there. But things like ZF, for example, where you could get way more XP than questing or leveling, I think it's a little too much. I think we need to make it so everyone is kind of out there enjoying the game world, investing in their character, and then when they hit 60, their reputation will mean more, their name will mean more, they'll feel more attached. Maybe if everyone's more attached to the character, we won't see as much drama and ninja looting, and people's reputation will matter a lot more. So I think that's something I'm okay with. I don't really wake up in the morning swearing about mage boosting, but it's a nice idea, I think, to get rid of insanely fast leveling methods. Things like mob tagging as well, I think, should be looked at, so that there's nobody at level 60 2 days into the game making it all feel worthless. We need it to feel meaningful. We need the raids to feel hard and challenging and awesome. And that's something Blizzard, I think, agrees with, and they seem to be working towards that direction. Let's talk about what I think Blizzard is doing here and why they're doing it. So basically, Blizzard is doing a Path of Exile League-style system. They want people to come back year after year after year because they can generate a lot of hype. You're going to have your friends talking about it. They're all going to want to play. You're all going to roll characters, and maybe you burn out after like a month, but that's okay. That's what happens in Path of Exile, and they are wildly successful, and everybody loves their company. So I think Blizzard wants to get a little bit of that. They can absolutely see that working really well. I think at the same time, Blizzard is concerned about this void that not having a fresh Classic will create. you'll end up with these giant private servers with all the WoW diehards playing them, and Blizzard won't be relevant or making any money. I think even if there isn't a huge interest, let's say only 1 million people play the new WoW season. Well, what if that it snowballs? What if more and more people are talking about it? The next season, season 2 is even bigger. Season 3 is even bigger. They've got a cash cow, and that's something I'm sure Blizzard wants to get in on. And they need a win right now. They need WoW to be relevant. They have to have it relevant. With things like Overwatch League not exactly, popping off. I like watching Overwatch League sometimes, but it's not really where they hoped. With things like the Overwatch 2 being just constantly delayed, there's a lot of stuff riding, in my opinion, on WoW right now, and they have potential. There is a road they can go down where these classic fresh leagues really, really, really pop off, and people get really excited for them, and they take a week off work, and they play and they play and they play, and the accomplishments feel meaningful, and people want to keep coming back, and there's esports, and there's all this cool stuff around it, and I think they want that, and I think we all want that, and that's why they're doing these changes. And yes, there's a void being left if they don't do it, but I think they also want something that actually succeeds. I think people are being a little too cynical here, and that's because I think ultimately Blizzard wants more people playing WoW Classic. They want more relevance to the game, and these changes are all designed for casual players mostly, but of course there's also the changes to make the bosses harder, and the aims at casual players are to get them playing. They want more people in the ecosystem. They want to have both ways, right? They want to have more casual players, but also make the bosses harder so that more of the hardcore players stick around. The serious players stick around. But of course, it's a fine line. Right now, the serious players seem angry about it. They don't like the lack of world buffs. The casual players may not really be paying much attention. But long term, hopefully, Blizzard hopes people have short-term memory and they just kind of get over the world buffs. And if they don't, maybe Blizzard adds them back in. And they hope people get over the faster leveling. And if they don't, they'll add it back in. And ideally, they're going to have their cake, and they're going to eat their cake, and they're going to still have a nice slice of cake at the end of it. And then next year, they get to relaunch it again and have it be even bigger. And then the year after that, and that's the goal. And I think it's a good idea. I'm all in on leagues. I'm all in on the idea of a league every single year, or in my opinion, it should be like 6 or 8 months. And you change the way the loot works somehow so that it's not a nightmare. And that would be great to me. And again, just recapping the positives here. All the changes they're making are trying to grow the base of players. They're trying to get more casual players in mostly. They're trying to keep the hardcore players by making a few changes here and there to make the bosses harder, to make things a little more interesting. And at the same time, they're trying to expedite things so that people aren't bored, they don't quit. They're trying to fix the pressure points where people all quit the game, and they know exactly what those points are. If you think, okay, Blizzard doesn't know better, they do have that data. They know exactly when your friend quit and your uncle and your aunt quit. They know when Ninja quit. They know when Tim the Tatman quit. They have all that data sitting there. And why not trust them at least this once, just to see if they can make it happen? I am all in on the Classic Fresh. I'm all in on it. I want to play it. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt this time. I think it's going to be a great launch. I think it's going to be a lot more hype than... I mean, the TBC launch is going better and better, but the TBC launch kind of just came, and it was just there. I think this launch is going to be a lot more hype. We're going to see, like, wow, what's Dr. Disrespect doing over there? What's Dr. Lupo doing over there? Okay, a lot of doctors are going to be playing, clearly. But I'm just saying, it's going to be more hype this time around, and I think that's going to be great. I think I'm in the mood for WoW Classic Fresh. I think if you had told me a week ago about no changes at all, I wouldn't have been that interested. So they did something to get me back in. They dragged me back in, and I'm ready to see what happens next. Ultimately, if you had told me a week ago that we were doing a no changes WoW Classic, I would have said, maybe not, maybe no thank you. But the changes and the ideas, the openness to change that they have, I think are great ideas. There is a lot of reservation from a lot of people right now, and a lot of unanswered questions, right? We have things like, are server batching going to be there? And God, I hope not. I hope we have the best servers money can buy. I want that ping to be as low as possible. I want that server tick rate all the way up. And hopefully things like that are not messed up. I think Blizzard has a shot here to do things right and make this a really, really cool thing. But they could easily go down the wrong road and absolutely mess everything up. So yeah, I just wanted to cover the WoW news coming out, Blizzard, with all this new info. And I want to do a quick video about it. If you have any thoughts, let's talk about it in the comments. Let's talk about your ideas for WoW Fresh. Let's talk about what you think could be done better, what Blizzard is totally screwing up. I want to hear what you think is going good and what's not going so good. Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great, great day.